I'm super excited about today's class. If you've done any of my previous Lifebook classes, then today is a sort of natural extension of those. We're going to move them on a little bit further. If you're completely new to all of this, and new to me too, then don't worry, I've got a very accessible, fun exercise for you today that's all about doodles and finding doodles in your everyday, so you'll never be lost for a doodle idea again. Hey amazing artist, my name is Kim Dellow. I'm a mixed media artist, art teacher, explorer and experimenter, and I'm all about creativity and curiosity. So today I've got an idea generation exercise for you, going to get you exploring your everyday, the things that are around you, just the things that you take for granted, and finding those moments of joy in observing them. And you can add this practice into your art routine, whatever your normal art routine is. We're also going to follow it through and create a project from it as well. So I've actually got 3 things for you to do today. The idea generation exercise, we're then going to make some papers from it, and then we're going to use those papers to give us a final page in our art journal, or it could be a standalone project. And it's wonderful to have the opportunity to be able to share with you as part of the amazing year-long Lifebook course that Tam, the Willowing Arts team and all the teachers involved put together for you. And Lifebook is all about creating to support your well-being. So one of the things I love to do to support my well-being is doodling. So that's why it turns up quite a lot. But it's not just about doodling, it's also about sort of grounding myself in the here and now, taking joy from observing the little things, the ordinary things in life, and finding that wonder and that curiosity and being sparked by just everything, really. So that's why I've put together today's exercise. I hope you really enjoy it and, take the parts of it that you love, put them into your own practice, change them up, evolve them to match your unique you. And I have a couple of freebies for you. One of them is a workshop that uses photographs to inspire your work, some exercises built around those, and it's actually a perfect companion to today's class. Also got an ebook full of some creative ideas that will just get you playing, and you can access both of those when you join up to my weekly email. And you can find that at bit.ly/Kim-Mail. So that's bit.ly/KIMMAIL. But you'll also find links underneath this video and on the Facebook page as well. So when you join up, there'll be some confirmation emails, so just follow those and you'll be able to access your video and your book. But if you have trouble with that or you miss that, every week when I send out those emails, I'll put a little link at the bottom of them so you'll be able to find it there too. Just keep your eye out for that. And in my weekly emails, I just share what I'm doing. I share my latest projects, latest workshops, and, tips about arting and things like that. So I hope you enjoy that too. Help you to create more. Okay, well, I can't wait to get arting with you. Let's get this started. I've also got some questions to answer from Tam and the team about creating. So yeah, let's get straight into it. The first thing I want to do is a little bit of idea generation with our everyday things, and that's one of my favourite creative exercises, is just sort of bring up lots of different ideas. I'm going to work in a small pamphlet sketchbook for this. Really anything you like to use is fine. You could use pieces of paper, other kind of sketchbooks, art journals, whatever you're comfortable with. I've gone with this because it's small and easy to carry around, and it's also quick and easy to fill, and they're often relatively cheap, or you can even make your own. You're also going to want to gather together some kind of colouring materials that you want to play with. So pens, pencils, crayons, anything that's easy to carry with you and that you already have in your stash. I mean, if the only thing you've got to hand is an ordinary graphite pencil or a ballpoint pen, then that's absolutely fine. Go with that. So I've got some paint pens with different nib types, crayons, pencils, brush pens, felt tips, anything I could grab really. It's going to give me a pretty mixed group of mark making. It's also quite a mix of colours. I wouldn't worry about colours at this point, just sort of pick some colours at random, whatever you've got to hand. And maybe this is also a great occasion to just sort of surprise yourself with different colours than what you'd usually pick. So the next thing to gather together is just any ordinary items from your surrounding area. Just randomly pick some things that are catching your eyes. And I'm in my studio at the moment, so the kind of things I've got here are a ball of string, some washi tape, scissors, more pencils and buttons, anything I could find that was close to hand. So start by picking something out that was really appealing to you. And for me, that was this watercolour paint tray. I really like the idea of the grid that this gives. So I think that's what I'm going to explore first and start filling out the pages in my sketchbook with. You can see we aren't really drawing items, we're just picking something about them that intrigues us. Let it inspire your mark making. Try not to overthink it. What you want is a book just full of mark making, patterns, doodles, all inspired by just everyday things that you've got around you. And enjoy being in the moment of having that inspiration happen, of being inspired by something that you would normally just take for granted, that you wouldn't even think about. And once you start getting into that habit, just think of all the other things that you've got in your surrounding area, in your environment, that's just rich with loads of ideas you can play with. And each of these items might inspire a lot of different ideas. So just let that happen and explore them. Anything that comes to mind, get it down. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be brilliant, just get them down. This is all about gathering these ideas together. And there's no bad ideas at this point, there's just fun playing with your mark making tools in your sketchbook. And I carried on with my grid idea, inspired by this watercolour paint tray, filled out another page and evolved the idea a little bit. If you can, try to change up your tool and your colour frequently. You want the book to be as full of different materials and colours as it is of ideas, if you've got that to hand. As I said, if you're just using one item to do it with, have a think about different ways you can use that item. If you're using a pencil, for example, maybe you can use it on its side. Or maybe you can cut off some of the wood so you can get some bigger marks with it. You can still get a rich reservoir of ideas, even with just some very limited things to hand. So I think it might be a good time for me to answer the first question from Tam and the team. So question number 1, how does creativity support your growth, health and well-being? Well, over the years, I've realised that I really need to be creative to function. I've always needed to do something, to make something from my imagination and with my hands. And I've always loved the creative side of any job that I've ever been in, that I've ever done in my whole career. But it was only later on in my career and my life that I realised how actually important, intrinsically important it was to me. So just having it as a pastime wasn't really enough, and it needed to be something that was interwoven strongly throughout everything I do to just keep myself balanced and healthy. And I'm really grateful that I got the opportunity to work this out, even if it did take me some time to get there to do that. So this ball of string is totally fascinating me at the moment. So let's explore this. And there's a lot of ideas that are just jumping out at me for this one. So don't forget to view your item from different angles, in different ways as well. That's all part of this too. Sometimes just changing up how you're looking at something can lead to new things. And I just love this higgledy-pickledy circle shape that's coming out of this. And I was happily playing here with the crayon when I accidentally got the end of the string under the book. So every time I ran my crayon over that piece of string that was there, it just gave an extra kind of unpredictable bump in the crayon line. And I really loved that. Really added to the look that I was getting from this. So you know what? I just made more of that. I put a whole load of string under the page and kind of went with it just to see what would happen. And I love how it turned out. So when things like that happen for you, just go with it. Follow those interesting little things that can happen as you're working. I think there's a lot more that this ball of string can give, so I'm just going to continue to explore this. First I went with a thin tip pen, and then I did a very similar pattern, but I changed up the tool to a brush pen. And this is the great thing of just changing up how you're doing something. You could do the same thing, but with a different tool or a different colour, and it will make a lot of difference. So whilst I'm playing with this, I will answer the next question. Question number 2, what is most important to you as an artist? I think that realising that creativity is in all of us, but and it's so undervalued in our society, and it really breaks my heart that it is. I think if it was more valued in our society, I would have got to a point of realising how much creativity was important to me much quicker in my lifetime. So I think it's important for me to help others to find their way of expressing their creativity and helping them to explore what makes them tick, find their own individual way of doing things. Because we're all different, and what I find fascinating, as you've seen, might not ring your bells, but I hope it gives you confidence and the tools to go out and find that for yourself. Find what really interests you with your creativity and help you to pursue it, to make creativity more of your life. Give it more time and more importance to help you maintain your well-being. And I love the fact that we could all be sat here right now with a ball of string just like this, and maybe you are sitting there with a ball of string, and we could all come out with so many different patterns and mark making just by playing, letting it happen. And I think you should definitely revel in that and value it. Whatever kind of marks are coming out for you in this, love those marks, enjoy doing them. It's who you are, and it's pretty amazing. So hopefully you're getting the idea of what we're doing here. You want to gather and fill out your pages with all sorts of marks and patterns, taking the simplest of things, those everyday items, letting them spark ideas both ordinary and extraordinary. Just fill up those pages. And remember, I said I was using this book because it's easy to carry around with me. Well, that's exactly what you can do with it. So go to different places in your environment, pick out different things, and maybe the ones that you ignore the most might be the most interesting to go look at. So take a little time to explore them and find the wonder in them. When you start really getting into the flow of this, you could probably fill out a few books. And, why stop there? If you can take this further afield, these little books, well, they fit nicely into pockets and bags. So, pick out some very easy traveling colouring tools. You don't have to overwhelm yourself. Just, pick out a couple, And then you could be filling out these pages whilst you're out and about. Perhaps you're on a quick break at work, or you're in the supermarket, all sorts of places, whether you're at work or play, or, doing the everyday things that we all have to do. Okay, so that in itself is an amazing art project to play with. Fill out some books from around the home, fill out some books from out and about too. Maybe you can even do some with some other arty friends. Just take a little time from your day to have like 10 minutes to find some wonder in your everyday. Over time, you're going to build up quite a collection, and it can be all that you do here, or you can use these as a reference material to inspire new projects. So I also wanted to give you another project idea that will get you started on using everything you've gathered here to put them into something else. Kind of the next step. So now I've moved on to some old project papers, grabbing anything that I've got really, and I actually went for some previous Lifebook classes. So some of these papers are from that. I've also got some papers from my art club classes and some printed papers from the background collection I have over in my Etsy shop. So, you can kind of sort of grab all sorts of different things. Try not to overthink it. Just go with whatever you've got. And whatever kind of paper that you've got. Some of these are on printer paper, just ordinary printer paper. I've got some craft paper here, some drawing paper, and just some ordinary coloured paper as well. That coloured paper, it's got a bit of paint on it. And to add into this collection, I've picked out some notebook paper as well. And now you've got your little book full of these mark making and pattern ideas you can flip through and have a look and pick out something that's jumping out at you today, or just pick one at random. I'm going to start this with some acrylic inks. You can use paints, you can use any of the tools you've already been using, or pick out something different to play with here. We're going to let all those gathered ideas now inspire some mark making and patterns on these pieces of paper. So one of your old project papers. Doesn't have to be literal now, you can let the idea evolve even more. It's just here really to get you working as a starting place, a jumping off point. And that freeform way that we use to gather the ideas, try and keep that same kind of flow in mind here as we start filling out some of the papers with marks. The great thing about using old project papers is, well, you've probably already got colour on them, that's the whole point. And, you don't feel quite as precious about them because, well, this is just a good place to use them up, really. You're not trying to preserve them for anything, are you now? So use them up, fill out with ideas and patterns and marks, any old how, and just play around with it. And I've got papers here of all different sort of shapes and sizes. Some of them are still intact, some of them have had big chunks taken out of them. It's just fun to play and let yourself continue that free-form way of just generating more ideas. Now, if you haven't got any leftover papers from other projects, you might want to start this process with putting a little bit of colour on some new papers. You can completely do that as well. I just thought it would be a good way to use up some of those extra bits and bobs that you might have hanging around. But obviously, if you don't have any, then, put some paint down, get some colour on some papers, coloured papers, craft paper, whatever you've got to hand, printer paper, newspaper. You could use anything really. You could use brushes, you could scrape paint across the surface. If you've got a roller, you could use that. If you've got some gel printing, you could gel print all of these. Acrylic paints are perfect as a base because they're a lot easier to layer over because they tend to stay put once they're dry. But, it doesn't really matter. You can also use gouache, you could use watercolour. But just keep in mind that if you are using something like watercolour, then you might get a little bit of colour mixing, but maybe that would add a new interest to the layers that you're putting on. If if you can change up materials for adding your marks and your patterns, go ahead and do that. I used all sorts of different things. I started with acrylic ink, but I also used Inktense pencils, and then some ordinary ink, and also some watercolour markers, all sorts of things I used here as well. Still using those ideas that I now call my house and garden book to inspire what's going down here. And don't forget things like you can put a layer of patterns and marking down, then you can go back over them when they're dry, put some more layers down, maybe change up the patterns a little bit, or just add to them, add some more interest. So for example, with one of mine, I did one layer where I watered down the acrylic ink, and then once that was dry, I went back over it with using the acrylic ink straight from the eyedropper, just to draw a random grid on the paper. So just as we did in the book where you used your materials in different kind of ways, you can do that here too. Have fun with it, flip around your gathered ideas from your everyday items, add them here and there into these papers. Don't feel that you have to fill up the whole paper. You can just put a little bit on one bit and move on to another page. You just want to build up a collection of different patterns and marks here. And the more pages you can add patterns and marks to, then the more variety you're going to have when we come to do the next part of this project. So I've been having so much fun with doing this that I forgot the question. So let's get to the next one. So that's question number 3. As an artist, what is your biggest struggle and how do you deal with it? So this is a bit of a toughie for me to answer. There have been a few struggles along the way. Creativity is not struggle-free. It's hard work and perseverance too. I mean, for one thing, one of my struggles was I had to completely change my mindset around being creative for a living, and it's been a wobbly path. I finally realised that the thing that was my biggest struggle was I just seemed to be fighting myself on everything all of the time for lots of different reasons. And I actually had to go through a period of acceptance before I could sort of find my way through that. And when I really started to just soak in acceptance, things started to drop into place a little bit more easily for me. I'm not saying that I've cured everything, that I've overcome all of my struggles. Obviously not. There's always more struggles, isn't there? But I have just sort of realised that I can make my life easier for myself by not holding on to toxic things. Now, I really like this dark Payne's grey ink that I've been using here. I think I've also been using the charcoal grey pencil, the Inktense pencil. Both of these give you a really lovely black, off black kind of colour, and that's great, but I also want to add in some variation with colour too. So don't forget to do that, change up your colours. I love the fluorescent pink and how that looks. So this is also an acrylic ink that I've been using here. And I've got things like bits of paper that I had writing on them from a project video that I did a couple of years ago with my art club members. These little pieces have been hanging around for a while. I didn't want to throw them away. I knew that they would come in useful for something, and I think that a pattern here with felt tip pen might be where they get used up. This pattern I didn't show you at the time, but it was actually inspired by the plate rack in the kitchen. So as simple as that. So you could tell I could probably go on like this for days. But let's have a look at the next question. So question number 4, what specific skill, new or existing, would you like to develop more? Now, usually when asked this question, I answer with drawing. I'm always looking to improve my drawing skills, and this kind of doodling actually also helps your drawing skills. It helps you to improve your hand-eye coordination, which helps you to get more accurate marks down when you come to do some drawing. And many people seem to think that they can't draw, but I think we all can draw, really. I think it's a case of embracing how you personally draw rather than holding yourself up to an impossible ideal. I mean, we've all done it, right? We've all seen those beautiful, beautiful drawings and thought, well, why can't I do that? And maybe you can with more practice, but if you don't practice and you stop completely, then you're never going to know, are you? And to be honest, it doesn't really matter if you can do it like that. I think you should just enjoy the way you draw and just enjoy the process of drawing. So doing these kind of doodles all helps in that. I just put them all into the same camp. Doodling and drawing, it's all the same thing. So I think I'll also answer the last question here too. So this is question number 5, and it's, what do you want beginner artists who are struggling with to know? I think really it's about enjoying the process and accepting, particularly as a beginner, you might not be where you want to be just yet, but if you keep practicing, you will get there. I think often if we just simplify things a little bit, add in a dash of acceptance as to where you are at the moment, if we're going to go with a theme, then I think you can concentrate more on just getting to the place where you find the fun, getting to find the things that you enjoy doing and building up those skills as you do it with continued practice. So do the art you enjoy doing. Even if it's small, even if you can only fit 10 minutes of art in a day, it all adds up and makes a huge difference. And maybe that's doing a page of mark making inspired by your kettle or a button or something. So I've been adding all these marks and patterns here with all sorts of materials, felt tip pens, inks, brush pens, even some refill ink from one of my paint pens. So once you've filled in your pages, have a look through them and see if there are any shapes you might want to cut out. Now don't overcut at this point, you don't really need to, but maybe there's a couple of things that you might want to just take out of a page. We're going to move on now to a bit of collage. So the project I'm going to make here is going to be A4 sized or letter size, and this can go straight into your sketchbook or your art journal or onto any other kind of surface that you like to use. You could also do it at any kind of sizes you want, of course. But for my surface, I think I'm just going to pick one of these pieces of paper to start me off. Now to get rolling with this, all I'm really going to do is start free-forming with different papers and different marks and just kind of match and see what happens, see where I can find the interest and what's appealing to me today. We've been using colour pretty haphazardly up until now, but this is now a good place to start focusing on it a little bit more and start picking out shapes and colours that you think are going to bring harmony to your piece. Don't overthink it again. You want it to just sort of still be a bit free, a bit more like the idea generation that we've been doing, but you also want to get to a point where you can start bringing this together. So spend a little bit of time just playing with different papers, different colours, mixing and matching, free associating the different papers and see what comes up from them. You might end up cutting out a few more things as you move along this, so do remember that you can always make more of these papers, so it's not like they're precious one-time only events, you can still make some more of them. As I work like this, I'm looking for a collection of different papers that I feel will work well together. So I'm looking at the colours, I'm looking at the mark making, I'm looking for variety in an interest in everything that I'm collecting together. And as you're mixing and matching like this, you can also snap a few pictures as you go, so you can remember any combinations that you particularly liked. You can always come back to those later. You really want to just be playing freely here before you start really sort of getting that combination down. And for me, that point at which I started to focus more pretty much came when I matched the orange paper that has that open pen scribble lattice on it, matched that with a piece that had some leftover acrylic paint and the large dot grid. Those two really kind of appealed to me, and I knew that I wanted to explore those a little bit more. So then from there, it's bringing in other bits of paper, other colours and patterns that are going to work well with those two. So something just felt happy about them when I put the two together, and I started to look for more ways of getting them to work. I liked how they matched with the pencil line notepad paper. I really like the texture of the spiral bound edge. I thought that would add a nice interest, and the colour really works well, and that mark making works well here too. And as I work my way through here, I can cut down papers again if I need to. I'm pretty sure that that dot paper is going to be on this, so I trim it down to fit where I think it's going to go. It also gives me a little bit of a leftover that I can use elsewhere on the page for some more balance, so that's nice. So you can keep free-form play around with little bits and pieces that you've got, and pick out the things that are really appealing that you know is going to work, and then free-form around that. Expand out the different pieces of paper that you've got on here. Search for the ones that really make you happy, that you think are going to go really well with this design. And it's a great way to sift through ideas, because unlike using paint, you don't have to commit too early to anything. You can sort of keep playing around. Again, you don't want to be overthinking it, of course, but you have the option to sort of try things in different places on the page, or try a different colour out and see how that's going to work. So the trick really is to listen to yourself closely and go with your first gut reaction to a combination. If it pings and says, yes, I like that colour or pattern or paper or texture, then just go with it. Remember that you have so many of these pieces of paper now, and a way of making more of them, that you can just do a few of these and pick out the ones that are your favourites. Once I've decided on where things are going to go, I will cut them down to make it easier. And if you know that something is going to be mostly hidden by a layer, then there's no point wasting it underneath another piece of paper. So, be quite brutal in your cutting so you can have bits left over for other projects. I can definitely see a colour palette starting to emerge here. So we've got that orangey yellow, we've got the sherbet yellow, and the Payne's grey with some white, pink, and a greeny blue colour as well. So I think it's forming quite a cohesive colour story. So as I work through, I start to match papers and patterns to fit into that colour story. Once you think you're there, it's time to commit to it completely, get things stuck in place. So this is another good place to take a photo so that you can remember the arrangement that you had more easily. Something to refer back to, because you're probably going to need to lift most of it back off again so you can stick everything down in the order that it should be. So things at the bottom should go down first, and then each layer goes on top. Sometimes you might be able to stick some bits and pieces down whilst all the rest of the pieces are on the page. But in most cases, you do need to take them off. You can also try lifting everything off in one place and just move it to one side so you can still get a visualization of how it was on that piece of paper. The other thing you could do, if you haven't got the chance to take a photo, is to take a quick sketch of it, just to quickly sketch out which pieces of paper went where. Now, as I'm building this up and getting things stuck into place, I can still make some adjustments. So if anything looks a little different because you've basically glued it down, so it is a little flatter now, you might end up changing things around turning things around, putting them in slightly different places, or even changing the layer order. I think I did that in a couple of places too. So even as you're gluing everything in place, you can still change things up to go with how you're feeling at the moment. So make those decisions based on how it now looks as you keep sticking down each piece. And once it's all glued in place, you can trim off any overhangs you don't want, or maybe you want to leave them there. That's another thing you could do. And hopefully you've got something that's just full of texture, full of colour, all of that wonderful mark making and patterns, just inspired from all of the idea gathering that we did from the simplest of things, everyday items. And then not only do you have your finished project and maybe lots of other pages like this as well, but you've still got that book where you've got all of those ideas that you gathered. And that could be a great resource for a load of other things you might want to do. And maybe you've got some leftover papers that are full of those patterns too. So enjoy playing and discovering, and I can't wait to see your collage pieces taken from your everyday items. So do share them on the Lifebook Taster Facebook page. And also come and join us for the full year of creating in Lifebook 2023. So I'm really looking forward to it. Happy arting, and I'll catch you again soon. Bye!